One dark night, I was on duty and experiencing one of the coldest nights of my life. Thankfully, I had a large burning fire keeping me company and soothing my cold, freezing self. This was still preferable to my time battling in jungles and other tough terrain throughout the Pacific. But this didn't mean I didn't encounter some trouble. I realized quickly I wasn't alone. On the other side of the fire, I noticed something angry. It was staring at me and exposing its fangs. After experiencing tough times on the battlefield, my healing process began during my post-war occupation duty. Japan had surrendered, and this was my last step before finally heading home. My stay was largely uneventful until one night I encountered an enemy I'd never had to face before. This beast, as I called it at the time, had the look of pure evil on its face and looked ready to take me down. I instantly pulled out my pistol and pointed it at the beast. We stared at each other. I think the beast had been stalking me patiently for some time and stopped in its tracks because I eventually spotted it. The stare down continued until eventually it must have decided to give up and quickly disappeared into the shadows. I still didn't know what I was dealing with. I was on duty again the next night and ensured to be on alert in case this beast decided to return. Suddenly, I hear a sound. What is it? I couldn't figure it out. It was getting louder and more frequent. I suddenly realized what it was, the sound of footsteps. Who on earth could this be? Why are they in such a rush? I then realized the footsteps were turning into a full-on sprint. I, for the second night in a row, pulled out my pistol. From afar in the dim light, I saw a young Chinese man. He's running towards me. He was yelling for help and looked absolutely petrified. As he ran towards me, I noticed something behind him, chasing him with ferocious pace. It was dark, but I saw his eyes. I recognized those eyes. The beast had returned. I was prepared to fire when the beast was out of the darkness. I suddenly realized what I was up against. It was a dog, a magnificent German Shepherd. I came to realize this was the most tremendous, beautiful dog I'd ever seen. Being such a huge dog lover myself, I could not bear to pull the trigger, even under those dangerous circumstances. I'd never killed a dog, and I couldn't imagine myself having to pull the trigger and end its life. What irony it was. Not even months before I had fought in many famous battles and killed fellow humans without any hesitance or remorse. Now this huge, snarling, vicious dog was threatening me and this Chinese man, and I couldn't shoot it, although I again was pointing the pistol right at him. For the second night in a row, we were at a standoff. Another stare down, more growling, neither ready to back down. I again stood my ground, did not fire a single shot. Once again, thankfully, the dog faded away into the shadows. After reporting the incident, I learned how this dangerous dog managed to get to me 2 nights in a row. I was told that this big dog was a real threat. Apparently he was one of several trained guard dogs the Japanese had used in patrolling nearby areas before they surrendered. After the Japanese surrendered and evacuated, they decided to release the dogs so they could cause as much trouble as possible. I'm glad I did not have to destroy this magnificent beast, but I'm also glad he didn't destroy me nor the young Chinese man. I never ran into another one after this night, but was always having a good look into the darkness. This story took place roughly around 20 years ago, just off the coast of South Australia. And this did not happen to me. This is a story I recall that happened to my father, one that he is happy for me to retell. One sunny day, he decided to do one of his favourite pastimes, fishing. He loved fishing, catching squid, flathead, it's all good stuff. However, there was always one that eluded him. The mulloway. Although he did not intend to catch the fish on this day, he had his spear gun ready just in case and intentionally placed himself in an area they are known to be in. He was enjoying the fish, just relaxing and taking in the peace of the open ocean. The fish weren't biting, but he wasn't too concerned, as he was just enjoying sitting back, relaxing, and was just overall having a good time. He said he's not sure what made him do it, but he decided to take a look down into the water. There it was, the ever elusive mulloway, going right under the boat. He rushed, grabbed his spear gun, and waited for his moment. Adrenaline was pumping. He felt so exhilarated and alive. He fired the spear gun. Success. It was a direct hit. He had no second thoughts and dived straight into the water. He had his eye on the mulloway the entire time, not losing sight of it. But while swimming down, he noticed something was not right. He noticed there was blood in the ocean, and the blood was not from the mulloway. Suddenly, he felt immense pain in his hand. He had a look, and sure enough, he was missing a finger. He used his spear gun with rubber, and he realized that in the heat of the moment, he must not have loaded the gun correctly, and when the spear gun fired at the rubber, it must have hit his finger on the way, severing it. He had a concern. He was swimming in an area that has had recent sightings of sharks. A shark can smell a drop of blood in the ocean from kilometers away. This was a real cause for concern. My dad made a decision that, although he does not regret, sees how it was not the best move. He proceeded to dive to get his fish. He grabs the mulloway and he heads back to the boat. When he was swimming back for the boat, his sixth sense kicked into gear. He didn't feel alone. He felt a presence, an immense presence. He didn't know if it was a shark, but refused to turn to sea. He threw the mulloway into the boat and sped off. When he was speeding off, he swears he saw a shark fin pop out of the water and circle. He was sure this shark wanted to feast on him. Nonetheless, he sped home and rushed to the hospital. He of course took a selfie of himself holding the mulloway before he left. He says he's learnt a valuable lesson. You never know what's lurking out there in the deep blue. This story happened a few years ago whilst I was driving across the Australian outback. I am a truck driver and I spend most of my time transporting steel from one place to another. I drive a triple road train. It's 53 meters long. It is the same length as an Olympic-sized swimming pool. One afternoon, roughly around 3 p.m, I was driving through the outback. A cyclone had been and gone and the rain was very heavy. Nothing but black clouds. Eventually, I reached one of the more challenging parts of my trip, a river crossing. This river has flowing water streaming across the path. When you come to the river crossing, you either commit to crossing them or you don't. With my truck, I should have enough horsepower to carry me through. I decided to commit. I powered over the river and it seemed to be going well. I managed to get the first 2 trailers over when suddenly the truck came to a complete halt. What I feared had happened. The 3rd trailer had gotten stuck in the soft sand right in the middle of the river crossing. Why was I so concerned? I knew what I had to do to get out of the river and I knew how to do it, but I knew there was something out there, lurking, that's going to make this task extremely dangerous. That thing is the saltwater crocodile. This situation is nothing new to the crocodile. This massive truck going over the river crossing has just created a lot of noise and could have attracted their attention. What I needed to do was hop out of the truck and gather some logs and wedge the logs under the legs of the 3rd trailer. I gathered the logs I needed and started making my way across the river crossing, trying to avoid splashing to ensure I don't attract their attention. I put the logs under the 3rd trailer successfully. So far, so good. I quietly made my way back to the truck and I thought I could hear something. Was something lurking in the water? It seemed like everything went quiet. Then it happened. I heard a huge splash and could feel this mammoth of a creature hurtling towards me. The adrenaline hit me instantly and I sprinted for safety. I'll always be thankful that I managed to avoid the predator's unforgiving jaws. I got back in my truck and I just prayed the logs I laid down would get me out of this mess. I started it up and attempted to move forward. Pushing on the accelerator, nothing seemed to be happening. I was daunted by the prospect of having to go back there and reorganize the logs. Then suddenly, success. The truck powered forward and in seconds I was out of the river and free to continue on my journey. Still full of adrenaline and disbelief, I powered on. In future, I've decided not to cross these crossings alone or without potential aid. The thought of a croc dragging me in the river will forever haunt me.